They don't sting to kill. They sting to plant. Their young feed on nerves. They bloom inside your mouth like flowers made of hunger. First comes the buzzing, then the pressure in your throat. And if you listen closely, you can hear them moving under your tongue. Villages erased, caves sealed and forgotten, eyewitnesses driven mad. And behind every case, one constant, the horrible yet tiny monster, the Jawbreaker. Welcome to Project Black Garden, a Monsters and Myths podcast. This is Season 2, The Snapdragon Files, Episode 25, File Number 375. I'm your host, Michael. This episode, we open the nest, we peel back the skin, and we show you what's been growing in the dark. You might want to keep your mouth closed for this one. In the shadowed folklore of several forgotten jungle-bound cultures, there exists the terrifying legend of the Jawbreaker Wasp. These creatures were said to be small, red and black wasps the size of a golf ball, with mandibles like bone shears and stingers that pulsed with a sickly silver venom. According to these myths, jawbreakers were not born of nature, but a curse from the underworld. A punishment sent by vengeful gods to silence a tribe that had once consumed sacred honey from divine hives. The gods' retribution birthed these monstrous wasps from obsidian and smoke. Now the Jawbreaker don't simply kill. They transform their victims into horrific incubators. They target sleeping or paralyzed humans, drawn by the heat of breath and the smell of fear. One of these horrendous insects has the potential to insert dozens of eggs directly into the soft tissues of the mouth and jaw, often depositing them while a victim is still conscious but unable to scream. Within hours, the larvae begin to hatch and feed, not on flesh directly, but on saliva, tongue tissue, and nerve bundles, spreading like an infection through the sinuses and throat. The infected area swells to a horrific bone-breaking size, and as the larvae mature, most victims can't close their mouth because of the swelling ball inside of it. Victims often begin to choke on their own laughter, a side effect of neurotoxins that produce hallucinogenic euphoria as the body is consumed from the inside for nourishment. At full maturity, usually within 48 to 72 hours, the swelling of the wound is usually so big that it splits the host's mouth and jaw wide open, usually resulting in death. Just before the host's throat or face is a flurry of new stingers and wings, often leaving a ruined, grinning, bloody husk behind. Many ancient cultures have warned of this species, In the myths of the Yora people, masks carved with gaping mouths were hung from trees to distract the wasps from real humans. Old healers carried smoking gourd pouches filled with crushed tobacco and bone ash to repel them. Stories say the victims could only be saved if the growing wound was cut out before the larvae hatched. Though not very popular, there have been many stories from the past about Jawbreaker attacks, such as in 1917, a British colonial unit reported a soldier found alone and giggling uncontrollably in the jungle. His lips were torn, eyes glassy, and he kept whispering, "They're tasting my teeth." He collapsed in convulsions moments later as his jaw split apart and dozens of thumb-sized wasps burst through his cheeks and eye sockets, flying off in all directions. His fellow soldiers burned the body and refused to speak of it again. In the northern Congo in 1953, an entire village was discovered eerily quiet by a group of traders. Their pots were still boiling, fires still crackling, but every single villager was dead. Their jaws descended, tongues missing, dried honeycomb patterns etched into the flesh of their throats. Their heads split in two. Locals say that a Jawbreaker queen had made her nest in the village shrine. The area was burned to ash and abandoned ever since. In 1982, in Brazil, a caving team investigating a sinkhole system never returned, except for one man found wandering along a highway. He was holding his head and bleeding from his mouth. In the ER, the doctors began surgery to remove what they thought was a softball-sized tumor protruding from his lower jaw. As they cut in, 3 larval wasps crawled out and took flight. He died immediately, and 3 of the surgical team would later fall victim to the same fate. In an undisclosed African nation in 1999, children in a remote orphanage began coughing up what nurses thought were black seeds. Within a day, several began choking violently. Surveillance footage, confiscated by unknown officials, allegedly shows larvae erupting from mouths, laying waste to everyone in the orphanage. No trace of any of the Jawbreaker insects were ever found, and only the footage remains. Now, my great Uncle Sam always put a warning on every one of the more intense files. And this might be one of the most graphic. So sit back, prepare yourselves, and don't freak out. This is what he referred to as the massacre in Alroa. The wind over the Alroa base carried heat like breath from a furnace. My great Uncle Sam checked the perimeter logs. 47 soldiers unaccounted for after the last sandstorm. No alarms, no movements, just gone. When he and his team were tasked to get to the bottom of this new mystery, he knew it wouldn't end well. Joining him was a new recruit, Hollywood, a young captain from California who just so happened to have movie star swagger, and he liked to run his mouth. Before they even got settled in the hot desert air, he cracked a nervous joke about Area 51's bug problem. Of course, nobody laughed, but Sergeant Perez, one of my uncle's favorite recruits, known for being sharp-eyed and smart as a whip, said she heard buzzing last night, like an electric fence, right inside her skull. They exchanged looks, uneasy, both knowing that they were in for a long night. All three of them found the first bodies near the motor pool. At first glance, they looked mummified, lips pulled back, jaws shattered inward, as if something had poured out of their mouths and unbelievably crawled away. They documented what they could, took pictures, and secured the perimeter, and moved on. By midnight, the base smelled of ozone and now rot. Perez heard faint scratching in the ducts above the command room. She motioned for Hollywood to check it out. My uncle nodded, as to say, hurry up. Hollywood climbed onto a chair, popped open a grate, and immediately froze. Inside, the metal was webbed with a resin-like honeycomb, pulsing faintly with heat. Tiny, translucent larvae squirmed within. Hollywood sighed and said, "Oh, shit." Then the noise began, a low, harmonic droning that vibrated through the air, setting everyone's teeth on edge. Moments later, the lights flickered red, sending everyone into high alert. The security camera showed movement across the compound, but the movement didn't make sense. It looked like thousands of shadowy wings slithering everywhere. The first wave came with a crash. The attack began at the barracks. A scream over the intercom was cut short by static, then replaced by a swarm sound, thousands of wings grinding like blades. Sam, Perez, and Hollywood rushed for the door, reaching as quickly as they could, just as a corporal stumbled out, clawing at his throat. His neck bulged, something moving beneath the skin. He tried to beg for help, but his voice gagged on the nightmare and blood within his mouth. And he tried to speak again, and only a spill of wet larvae came out before his windpipe collapsed in front of them. Perez emptied her rifle into the dark, tracer fire revealing wasps the size of fists, their exoskeletons glinting with a strange metallic sheen. The insects didn't scatter, they swarmed, coating walls, lights, and flesh alike. The fight seemed to last for hours, wave after wave of helpless soldier succumbing to the sting of the thousands of insects with the call sign Jawbreaker. It was impossibly fast as their sting laid their larvae, once with human DNA and blood, seemed to speed up their growth. After about the 30th time of witnessing a fellow soldier's head explode from the newborn larvae, my uncle became numb. But he refused to let his team give up. He grabbed Perez and Hollywood, and they barricaded themselves in the medical wing. The dead soldiers lined the hallways, faces locked in devastated grins, mandibles severed, teeth exploded everywhere. Hollywood began to panic. He pulled up his flashlight to get a better look, pressing it against the wall. And he saw that it moved. The plaster pulsed. Underneath, the Jawbreaker Wasps had built a hive through the insulation, each cell oozing with bioluminescent slime. One of the soldiers trapped inside was still alive, her chest rising and falling, even as larvae writhed beneath her skin, pressing at her ribs like a second heartbeat. It was every sci-fi horror movie they had ever seen in real life. Perez raised her pistol, but my great uncle Sam stopped her, whispering, "They're using us to build the nest. We have to find another way." The three of them decided to burn the whole thing down. They had the right ingredients and enough kindling to do the job. It didn't take them long to set everything up, to torch the hive. Fuel lines ruptured and blue fire rolled across the compound. For a moment, it looked like victory. Charred wings and the smell of burning exoskeletons. Hollywood fell to his knees in relief, though it was too soon. That's when the Queen arrived. She was enormous, 2 meters long, thorax glowing red, orange, like molten glass. She smashed through the watchtower, trailing smoke and ash. Her stinger, impossibly large, impaled the ground, injecting rivers of larvae that writhed toward the flames without burning. It was an impossible sight, something my great uncle had never experienced. Panic set in, and Hollywood ran for the generator shack. He grabbed a claymore and shouted, "California sends her regards," before detonating it beneath the Queen. The blast tore her apart, but also ripped the roof away. My Uncle Sam and Perez barely made it out of the way of the explosion as the sky turned black with her royal insect blood. As dawn tried to scratch its way through the gray and silence of the hundreds of soldiers stationed at Al Roa, only 3 lived. My great Uncle Sam, Sergeant Perez, and Captain Hollywood. They sat in the wreckage of the comms tower, faces blistered, uniforms shredded. Around them, the sand trembled, eggs hatching beneath the surface. Perez whispered, "They're not gone. They're nesting deeper." My Uncle Sam stared at the horizon, at the faint shimmer of more wings rising from the dunes. And he ordered, "Then we don't run. We make sure no one ever finds this place." They made their way to a secret location just under the base that only my great uncle knew about. And they watched as he armed the last of the thermite explosives. And then they all walked into the base's ruins, just as the buzzing began to build again, soft at first, then like a fuel for nightmare, it grew until it was deafening again. Sam set the timer for just enough time for them to escape to a safe distance and never look back. Years later, my great Uncle Sam secured the official classified document, or after action report, as he refers to it. Incident report, forward operating base Al Rule, Anbar Providence. Date redacted. Access level top secret, eyes only. 1. Summary of events. At 0400 hours, a catastrophic biological outbreak occurred at forward operating base Al Rule. All standard communications were lost within a 90-minute window. Surveillance footage ceased abruptly. An airborne recovery team deployed at 0900 hours discovered the base fully compromised. Casualties: 138 military personnel, all presumed dead. 3 survivors: my great uncle Samuel, Sergeant Perez, and Captain Hollywood. All survivors were recovered in severe psychological and physical distress, exhibiting signs of dehydration, nerve trauma, and extreme entomophobia. Captain Hollywood had to be sedated after attempting to claw his own tongue out. 2. Biological entity observed. Species codename Jawbreaker. Designation: extraterrestrial origin suspected. Physiology: hive, organized. Use social insects. Drones 6 to 9 inches in length, armored, capable of rapid flight, and direct oviposition into humanoid hosts. Larvae gestate in cranial cavities. Emergence results in massive tissue destruction and psychological shock to witnesses. Death is a foregone conclusion. Confirmed neurotoxin presence capable of pacifying hosts during infestation. Queen class specimen. Size: 2 meters in length. Capable of coordinated command, flight, and penetration through military-grade armor. Destroyed via explosive ordnance. However, larvae continued activity post-mortem. Part 3. Recovered survivor statements. My great uncle Sam. Quote, "They weren't acting like insects. They moved like soldiers, knew where to strike, took out the power, the fuel, the water lines. We were outmatched before we even fired a shot. I saw them crawling into mouths, pushing deep, while the victims just stared at me like they were glad it was over." Sergeant Perez. Quote, "Hollywood says they evolved mid-flight, adapted. First we burned them, then they came back fireproof. They were learning. They weren't just killing us. They were seeding us." Captain Hollywood. Sedated confession. "They used us to grow. They used me. I can still feel them in my throat. They're dreaming inside me. They're waiting. Don't let me leave here. Don't let them out." Part 4. Official site status. Entire base has been declared Biohazard Omega. Multiple subterranean chambers discovered beneath wreckage containing hundreds of empty egg sacs, many already hatched. Sand surrounding the base is vibrating. Infrared reveals movement beneath the dunes. Scorched earth protocol was enacted. The area has been glassed with incendiary saturation bombing. Still, faint buzzing has been detected via remote drones. Part 5. Recommendations. Immediate classification of species and development of counterbiological protocols. Establish satellite monitoring over similar desert regions globally. Surveillance of all survivors for delayed infestation, hallucinations, or behavioral anomalies. And finally, recovered drone footage. 6 days after detonation. Camera captures a lone sandstorm rolling across the site. Within it, grainy footage. A new queen, larger than the last. her thorax glowing with thousands of viable eggs. She appears to spot the drone just before the feed cuts out. Project Black Garden. File number 375. Closed. Now in his personal notes, my great Uncle Sam had handwritten along the edging that he thinks some of our most famous science fiction horror movies were influenced by the rumors of this file. Okay, fellow gardeners, I won't keep you much longer this week. Prepare, though, as Season 2 comes to a close, with the season finale of the Snapdragon Files next time, as I saved one of the best for last, the infamous and misunderstood Yeti. As always, I'm Michael, and this has been Project Black Garden, a Monsters and Myths podcast. Season 2, The Snapdragon Files. And remember, monsters are real. And the next time you feel something crawling on your skin, it might already be too late.